Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. I'm Scott Hambrick.
And I'm Karl Shute.
And today on the Online Great Books podcast, we're going to talk about some of Robert Howard's Conan the Barbarian stories, which is such an unlikely thing to do, it seems like.
I don't think so. I loved it. I
did too.
I've read 5 of these stories coming into this, and it's just fantastic. There is so much of your popular culture now, dear listener, that comes out of Conan that you don't even know. Any movie you've ever seen where the guy's in a sword or has a sword
And a loincloth.
That's Conan. It's all Conan.
Yeah, these are supposedly the first of the sword and sorcerer genre, right?
Yeah.
Karl, I think they're uniquely American.
Tell me why uniquely American.
Conan is a rugged individual and a man of self-determination and self-will. I think he is a uniquely American character.
Yeah.
Because in the European tradition, let me make some sweeping generalizations, okay?
Please do.
By the way, we're not talking to anybody right now. There's no one listening. The pandemic has played out. We're the last people on Earth.
Maybe there's one person getting a podcast through a dedicated landline somewhere in the ruins of civilization.
In Alpha Centauri, the bits have gotten there. You think of other heroes that we read: King Arthur, Beowulf, Achilles, whatever. None of them are like this gentleman, this barbarian. None of them are like that. And I think it's interesting that he chose that he was a barbarian. He could have been Marshall Dillon, like from the Gunsmoke stories. He could have been anything. But Howard chose this person who was not of civilization, who was from the frontiers, the northern marches, to represent this sort of power of the individual.
Am I from the northern marches?
You're from some northern marches.
Not from the far north.
The Hyborian.
I think I'm trying to figure out which one of us will read this better, but I think one of us ought to read the first paragraph of The Phoenix and the Sword. The Phoenix on the Sword, which is the first Conan story. Who will do it justice?
I don't know where it is.
Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities and the years of the rise of the sons of Ares, there was an age undreamed of when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Nemedia, Ophir, Brithunia, Hyperborea, Zamora with its dark-skinned women and towers of spider-haunted mystery, Zingara with its chivalry, Koth that bordered on the pastoral lands of Shem, Stygia with its shadow-guarded tombs, Hyrcania whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom of the world was Aquilonia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. Hither came Conan, the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand, a thief, a reaver, a slayer, with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet.
Who ain't for that?
What a great beginning.
Gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth. Even his moods are bigger than other people's,
He's not a good guy.
Now, wait a minute.
He's not a conventional good guy.
He's an anti-hero, isn't he?
If he comes to your town, he's probably going to destroy it, but it will have been better that he did it.
If he comes to your town. Right.
Conan shows up in Cook County, Illinois. It's not going to be pleasant, but it'd probably be better.
Yeah, I think so. They talk about Howard, the author, does this thing that Tolkien does and that Frank Herbert does, where he quotes some sort of esoteric history that exists only in his universe, right? And so this section that you read just now is from that. And he talks about the proudest kingdom of the world was Aquilonia. And you read on and you find out that Conan came in and killed their king and took the country. He took Aquilonia for his own.
Uh-huh.
But even though, well, maybe because Aquilonia was conquered by the greatest force of human will in the Hyborian world, it was the greatest nation. It's amazing.
Yeah, just one guy came in and did it.
Yeah.
That's mythical.
He's sullen-eyed, sword in hand. It's great.
I was thinking, what would an introduction like this be for the podcast? Out of windswept Oklahoma came Hambrick, the Slayer of...
Of what?
I don't know. What is it that you slay?
Coffee. I don't know.
Slayer of comfortable notions.
Of goodwill.
Red Pillar Extreme. With him rode Karl of Illinois. Still, from the dreaming city of Chicago, ivory towers twinkling in the night, still bearing a trace of the degeneracy of his origin.
Ridiculous.
There's so much stuff like this that, look, if you were a kid like me and you read any of those paperbacks with the wonderful cover art that you grabbed back when we had bookstores way back in like 1980, my dad would give me $10 and I would come out with 4 books.
Wow, that was high dollar, man.
Maybe 5 when we started, but
yeah.
Now you can't get one. And I would get a bunch of this stuff. And like, I was thinking about the stuff that I've read. I read a lot of Michael Moorcock, who's wrote in the, I know his name's funny, but wrote in the 60s and 70s. And it's the same stuff. Elric was his hero in Eternal Champion series. I love that stuff. Fafford and the Grey Mouser by Fritz Lieber. You're laughing. They're so good.
I don't doubt it.
They're so good, but they're all this sort of stuff. There's an evil sorcerer. There's often a woman. And then there's heroes of some sort that aren't entirely good, but that you cheer for anyway. That are forces of nature coming in and fighting the degenerate civilization.
Yes. In that first story, the Phoenix in the sword or on the sword. What is it? What's exactly?
Phoenix on the sword.
On the sword. There is an assassination plot afoot. Mm-hmm. And Ascalante is one of the people conspiring to kill Conan. And he says, I was a statesman before I was an outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
And I read these 5 or 6 stories that you told me to read. Loved it, by the way. And it's just full of these little lines like that where I wanted to sit down with Howard and say, where did that come from? What were you thinking when you said that? Because I don't think that's a toss-away line, him juxtaposing statesman and outlaw like that. Because, Conan's the outlaw that's, frankly, now a statesman. Really interesting. And this Ascalante guy has honeycombed the empire with sedition and unrest. In short, I, working in the shadows, have paved the downfall of the king who sits throned in the sun. By Mitra, I was a statesman before I was an outlaw. But he's using all these outlaw methods, to act on the state.
Well, I was thinking about this. I wanted to come at the stories on their own, but there's a time in which they're written. So Howard lived a short life. I suppose you could go read about it if you want. I think he died at 30.
It's probably nuts.
Yeah, a weightlifter, so says Info Galactic, an avid weightlifter. But this is 1932 when this is written, and I was thinking about this. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was born in 1902. So would have reached peak earning power, the time when you make your life, 27, stock market falls, and you've got until World War II of not much economic growth.
Malaise.
Yeah, and that's when these stories are written.
Yeah, and he's supposedly from Wichita Falls, which was the driest, dustiest, windswept, godforsaken place in North America at that time, probably.
Is Howard from Wichita Falls?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well,
interesting.
He spent a lot of time in Wichita Falls, yeah.
And so this is Depression-era stuff, and the kingly powers are always kind of the ones that are, they're the reason that the people are pretty happy when Conan shows up.
Right.
You know what I was thinking? There's the last story that I read. It's the one with the dreaming city. They come out of the desert into a dreaming city. Slithering Shadow, I think. So Conan comes out of the desert. This is before he was king. And he's got this woman in tow, and they're dying of thirst. And they come to this city that there's nobody in it.
Sounds perfect.
Well, except that there are people in it. There's a few people left, but they seem like they're sleeping. And every now and then they'll wake up, but then they'll go back to sleep. And it turns out that they're a terrifically advanced civilization that spends their life drugged.
Yep.
You know, there's all sorts of things pinging in my mind at that. And then there's this monster that lives under the city that goes up and just eats one of them every now and then.
This is pre-Aldous Huxley, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's Adventures in Conan. The last line of that one is hilarious, but there's another woman in there, and there's a love triangle, and of course the demon gets killed, and they escape. But just that image of this city that is perfect in every way, but the people have nothing to do. They're so caught up in their desires that they have nothing to do but just indulge them. Explain to me why I thought that was...
Yeah, seems right.
Isn't that what people do? I mean, maybe it's what they did in 1932.
Well, yes. One of the things that makes Conan great, I think, in Howard's mind, or why he wrote him as great, is because he always acts, and he acts in opposition to challenges. I didn't see him trying to set rights or wrongs right when he saw a challenge. He acted. In the Elephant's Tower story, somebody says, "Oh, there's some treasure up there," and he says, "Why hasn't anybody stolen it?" And they said, "Well, it can't be stolen." He says, "I'm stealing it. That's it. I got to do it." He just reacts to the challenge, and he is primarily a man of action and agency. That's it.
Yeah, the Elephant's Tower is fun. So there's this. He's in the bar and he hears a story about. Of course, it's a sorcerer, you know, who's up in the tower. It's always a sorcerer, but Conan hears about it in the bar. As I'm going to go do it. And then he runs into the master thief of the world who's been planning it for years and years and years, who just sees him and is like, "I like your grit. Let's work together." Just nobody else would do anything. And the thief who had been planning it sees this barbarian hop over the wall. Says, "Oh, okay. I could use you." Conan's a very attractive image of masculinity, I think. Like you were talking about just acting, there's a spider. There are going to be spoilers, I think. There's always a monster, but there's a huge spider in the tower. Conan's trying to fight it, and he's getting enmeshed with the webs. And the way he wins, he just grabs a big gemstone and throws it at it. You know, the unexpected. I'll take this treasure and just throw it and smush the spider, like this big 5-foot spider crawling around. It's great fun. It's great fun.
Why is he a great hero, though? I mean, is he a hero?
There are things about him that are, let me say things that are about him that are attractive. That he takes action. That he is not, well, he calls it, there's a line in that slithering story where he's hearing what the people do. That they spend their time, they live only for sensual joys. Dreaming or waking, their lives are filled with exotic ecstasies beyond the ken of ordinary men. "Damned degenerates," growled Conan. "It's all in the point of view," smiled Thalis lazily. Thalis is the woman that shows up in that story. Well, no, it's not in the point of view. You know, you're going to spend your life drugged, in sleep, dreaming. Like the girl that shows up in that story, one of the men of the city thinks she's a dream. And is amazed that she's actually real. They have mistaken dreams for reality. And Conan won't have it. You know, reality's reality. the sword that he carries is a great dealer of reality.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that he's not a degenerate by his lights, you know. For him, degeneracy would be inaction, passivity, you know, just taking what... I mean, it's 1932, 1933. These times might ring a little bit. People are losing their money with no warning. Banks would just go under. And, you know, what would you do? You just huddle and take it. But there wasn't anything to do. What could you do? You know, you can't fight City Hall. Brother, can you spare a dime? You know that song?
Yeah.
And to be caught in that, and then to have a hero like this, what would Conan do in the Depression?
Do we need to start selling WWCD bracelets?
What would Conan do? Can we make money on it?
Probably not. What would he do in the Great Depression? Would he find the Federal Reserve Bank and kill all the governors? I mean, what would he do? Would he rob the wealthy guy that owned the coal mine in Virginia? Would he, you know, what would he do?
I think he'd be more like Robin Hood, which might be part of the appeal. So the Robin Hood story, you might have read them as a kid. The Howard Pyle story collection was what I read. And it's always a mistake to think that Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. He didn't. He stole from the feds of the time.
To be rich at that time meant that you were part of the government, essentially.
Yeah, so Conan's a thief, but he's never stealing from the poor farmer of Numidia.
Yeah, he's stealing from some sorcerer that has cast a spell over the entire land.
Or some effete nobleman. Or
degenerate layabout king who's overtaxing the people. That was one of the things in was it Achilles, was that king had just continued to levy tax after tax on the people of the city, and they were mightily pleased when the barbarian came down from the north and did away with that.
He's a bringer of justice of a sort.
How does he evaluate what's just, though? I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think he just has like a degeneracy avarice compass, and he just wants to crush that.
To crush which one? The degeneracy and the avarice?
Yes.
Both of them?
Yes. You know, if he sees these people that are degenerate or on the take somehow, he wants to subjugate those people to the sword.
There's a line in the story about the Black Colossus. The titles are great. He's just a mercenary who gets drafted by the queen, by the princess, to run the army. She prays to Mitra, one of the northern gods.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Not Mithra.
Mitra. All of the names sort of have resonances with stuff that he'd read. Like there's a time, I think Conan speaks some Gaelic in the middle of this.
Yeah.
So he's probably Irish.
Yeah, he talks about the Picts in here. And
the Stygians and there's kind of a fake Egypt.
Egypt.
And Atlanteans and there's all sorts of like there's the one in the tower who had lived for millions of years was imprisoned. There's just so many creepy layers and hidden cities and it's cool. I don't know why it attracts me so much. You know, have you ever heard those legends about the Sphinx in the desert? You can go down rabbit holes on this. We're pretty sure when the pyramids were built. Nobody really knows when the Sphinx was built. It's older. How much older? The wear patterns look like it's a lot older.
It was after Atlantis sank, but before the Hyborian peoples arrived on the scene.
And there are, you know, your mind kind of reels when you think about places when you find evidence of human civilization that predates what you know. The earliest that we know is Egypt, and 6,000 years ago. And you find remains of a city from 20,000 years ago. It's like, it's weird.
Have you read anything about this Göbekli Tepe?
Yes.
There's this city that archaeologists have found in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. GobekliTepe, 2 words. And the thing looks like it was just covered up on purpose. It looks like somebody just hauled dirt in and just buried the thing on a particular week. And it seems to be more than 9,000 years old.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's way older than anybody thought any sort of civilization like that had existed. And it just messes up anthropology, frankly. Nobody really has anything smart to say about it. It's just largely ignored, I think. And it's not the only one.
Well, humans have been around for a long time, and our written record goes back about 6,000 years, and that's it. And only in a couple of places does it go back that far. Well, what were people doing in all of those times? Were they doing anything? Well, they were having adventures. They were singing songs. There was Conan characters running around. Great masses of people were moving. Who knows what they were doing? And this story all of the stories build on that eeriness of thinking about the past before our written records. Like Stonehenge. What the heck is Stonehenge?
I don't know.
It's been there as long as anyone's ever looked at it.
Have you seen any of the little videos on like Instagram and in the Twitters? Like there are little cities in Ireland, like where goats are like have taken over the city, and have you seen any of these where like wild?
No, I haven't.
Like I've seen videos of like just mountain lions walking down the middle of the street in the middle of the day. Like we've been under the whatever the hell this thing is that we're dealing with right now, and it takes about a week, and the animals are back, on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
You think about a city made of steel. How long is that thing going to be around? Not as long as the Sphinx. Yeah, I mean, could we have reached technological heights long ago that we have no evidence of any longer? I don't know, maybe.
And this thing of playing off the mysteries of the past, it is in this genre. I read a lot in this genre for my fun. It's used over and over again. I think it's Terry Brooks. Sword of Shannara has this. There's buried cities with magic, and the magic turns out to be, it was us that was buried. It's like Planet of the Apes. When
Right.
Charlton Heston comes back and sees the Statue of Liberty, it hits you in the face with the thought of time.
Yeah, and the impermanence of man. Kind of think that we're just always going to be here. We're just always going to keep on keeping on, and we're at the pinnacle of civilization. And I like to think about the extremities. What it was like in the early, and what it'll be like late.
Yeah, I remember a story I read by an author. I know our friend Wolf is a big fan of his. Joe Abercrombie had some stories, I think, called The Shattered King, or Half a King is one of the stories. And the witch in the story has this mystical talisman that she's found and that she's going to unleash at the proper time in the story. And it's never called what it is. But if you're an attentive reader and you're reading it carefully, you see...
It's Amazon Prime?
Amazon Prime? Is that
what she has? Is that what she is?
No, I mean, but she's got a revolver.
Mm.
But it's never described as a revolver. It's kind of fun the way that it's described as the way that people who'd never seen such a thing would have thought of it, A blast, and suddenly death appears from a distance from her.
Right. Have you ever thought, I'm sure you have thought of this, like, what if you showed up at the Battle of Hastings with, like, a Ruger 1022, just a 22 rifle?
No one would know what was happening.
Nobody would know what was happening.
They wouldn't know where to find you.
And we would have kept the damn Frenchies out.
Yep.
You didn't say anything about when we were talking about why is he a hero, or, well, I mean, we could go back even farther and saying, is he a hero? And I think he is a hero. I think there are tales of daring do here. There is action. He is the greatest of men. And all those things, I think, contribute to him being a hero, at least in these stories. But you didn't say anything about like his strength and his size.
Well, yeah, he's a big guy. He's got muscles.
He's a big, strong, dark-headed, blue-eyed man with a dark, scarred face whose preferred mode of dress is a loincloth. And sometimes he carries a shield. Sometimes his sword is sheathed. but most of the time it's just in his hand and he's just walking around.
Yeah, there's an aesthetic appeal to it. There's definitely that he does not look like...
Well, he walks into a bar and they're like, there's a barbarian.
Right.
They all know instantly.
Right. He's different from them. You know, he's not Pajama Boy.
Yeah. I mean, the people in the bar, they're wearing like velvet jerkins and, all this weird, like quasi-medieval Elizabethan dress. And sometimes they have armor and sometimes they don't. But he just strides into a bar in a loincloth, maybe a fur thrown over his shoulder, and just doesn't care. Are these Westerns? Are Westerns these?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was thinking about that. There is kind of a mystique that people who live, we've talked about this before, people who live more in the wilds have compared to cityfied elites. Okay, you're laughing at me because I'm one of them. I'm a cityfied elite. Well, I'm not an elite, but I'm cityfied. Maybe you just go out to the country and you're going to ride in a canoe down a river. You come from Manhattan or Los Angeles or something, and you go out into the wilds. Oh, well, this will be fun. Let's ride in a canoe. And you've never done anything like this in your life. You don't know how to move a boat. You don't know how to put on the life jacket. You see a little white water and you're afraid. And then the tour guide just tells you matter of fact what to do, just grabs the canoe, and is completely at home in situations where you would be at a loss and you'd be calling your lawyer, or calling your people to handle it. That's like a little discomfort there. Why don't I know how to do this stuff? Why am I not the sort of person who could go into a dreaming, demon-haunted city and come out alive? What's wrong with me? I'm the sort of person that would look for somebody else to fight my fights and do my stuff. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
It came out a little more jumbled than I thought it in my head. It just that the capable person, this is the person Clint Eastwood plays in every movie.
In city life, things just tend to work.
Mm-hmm.
You call Uber Eats, and there's a 97% chance your food's just going to show up, and it'll be what you ordered. You flush the toilet, the water goes. Things just tend to work. Wife and I were out putting up fence yesterday, and I've got a John Deere tractor with a front loader, and we were driving T-posts in the ground. And you put the post where you want it, and then one of you holds the post vertical, and the other one puts the front loader bucket on top of the post, and the front loader will just push it into the ground. Except there are rocks,
and
it bends your post. And then you have to do something different. Like nothing works. When you leave town, nothing fucking works. I promise you nothing works. You go to hook up the brush hog, and there's a 3-point hitch and a little PTO drive shaft that's detachable, and you have to put the PTO. Most of the time, something will get pinched on your body, and you'll cuss and throw a hammer, and nothing goes right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what civilization is. It's just like making the routine easy, making it dependable. I think that we're keenly aware that things have gotten easy, and I think there's a part of man that doesn't feel good about that.
Well, there's a discomfort.
What if the veneer goes away?
I've never gotten Uber Eats in my life. I can't imagine doing that. I can't imagine paying money for somebody to drive to a restaurant and get my food for me.
I haven't done it either.
I would never do it. But the people before they shut us down, where I would go work in the gym, I love them. They're great. They get Uber Eats all the time, but it's nothing. It's just whatever. I'll call and food will appear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it is for the most part. It's pretty nice when it works. It's why everybody wants to move there. But it's fragile.
Yeah, it has its cost.
It has a double cost, I think. It has the cost in that it's fragile. It does not take much for it to break down.
And you lose that very human part of us that got us there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was guys like Conan who carved out civilization. Maybe they weren't as cool as Conan, but it was guys like Conan that I'm going to read Jeeves and Wooster for the Plague Sessions.
Oh, by the way, go sign up for that. They're free. You can do a seminar with Karl. You can do a seminar with Michelle. You can do a seminar with John Pasquarello that we did the Pride and Prejudice show with. You go to onlinegreatbooks.com/plague. Doesn't cost you anything. It's on the house. Okay, Karl.
So Wooster is kind of a silly young man, but he's a child of a noble house. He had some ancestor somewhere, and it mentions it in the stories. He had an ancestor who, clobbered somebody else on the head with a sword and carved out England. Mm-hmm. That's the way these things happened, was people like this who could do stuff and who were men of action. And you live in the city, and it's wonderful, and it's comfortable, and you can go to the theater every night. At least you used to be able to. But you might lose something of you that you would have had if you had to put fence posts in the ground. I don't want to romanticize it. It's not, I guess I am, but to be urban might be, at least I think this is Howard's sense, to be urban is somehow to be less.
Or is to not be fully in touch with that sort of formative power that the human has had, right? That civilizing power that humans clearly have and clearly can tap into, or we wouldn't have what we've got. He was very interested in that.
Well, humans can do more than we think we can do.
Yeah.
I enjoy, the older I get, the more, and really the more I am anti-war, if I'm anything. But I love reading the stories. I love reading the stories of World War II. I haven't found a real good World War I book yet. The Civil War.
You haven't found a good World War I book?
I'm sure someone will send me one. I haven't come across one that I've been able to sit and read.
Ernst Jünger, Storm of Steel.
All right.
Yeah. You want a novel? What do you want?
Just novels or histories.
Yeah, that Peter Fussell, Fussell, got some good histories, I think.
Okay.
Peter. Mr. Fussell.
But you read those and you find out the things that humans are capable of doing. And you can regret that there was this, horrible disaster of a war, and yet thrill at the things that, like, what is it, Pickett's Charge at Gettysburg?
Oh, gosh. Oh, my God, Karl. We need to read Killer Angels. Have you read that?
Nope.
Oh! Okay, yeah, we got to do that. It's about Gettysburg. So good.
I mean, just read about Pickett's Charge and imagine are you the sort of person that could do this? And the answer is most likely no. But you could be. And maybe you don't want to ever have to do something as ultimately foolish, I guess.
Storm a beach.
Yeah.
Charge of the Light Brigade. Right.
God forbid that you actually have to do it, but you could.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're living in the city, ordering from Uber Eats, watching Netflix, learning everything there is to know about Tiger King, you might be betraying a little bit of your own essence. I would rather you read Conan.
Yeah. Yeah, and old history. How much different was the Battle of Hastings from one of these battles in one of these Conan stories? Probably not much. You've got men of action, men of will. They take some perilous voyage across the windswept, choppy seas of the English Channel and fight Harold Godwinson and his forces on their own soil and win,
mm-hmm.
and take an island nation and add it to their empire, which by and by the sun never sets on. People really did this stuff.
Yep. Conan the Barbarian, William the Conqueror.
Yep.
If he hadn't conquered, he just would have been Bill.
Bill. Here's a World War I book. Harry Elmer Barnes, The Genesis of the World War.
The World War.
Written before World War II.
That's such a hopeful title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to read The Killer Angels by Michael Shera. A friend of mine said, hey, listen, you've got to read this. You've got to read it. And I went to Mexico to some, resort, and laid around in a very un-Conan way. And back in the pre-Kindle days, I would pack a whole bag of books and check it. we'd be gone for 12 days, and to get enough books for all of us to get through the thing, we'd have to check a 60-pound bag. And I laid down on a lounge thing, whatever, and opened that book and did not get up till it was over, till I finished it. Astounding. And it's about these people that are caught up in the circumstance. They must act, and they have principles, both sides, and they must act, and they do. Good, bad, or indifferent, but they act, and they act in ways that are thrilling and unlikely and improbable, but we know is true. They're heroic. Even when they get mowed down, they're heroic in the thing.
Sure. I'm trying to think of connection points for listeners of ours who might not read this sort of thing. There was recently a series on HBO. It ended very poorly, in my opinion, called Game of Thrones, that all sorts of people got caught up in. That's Conan. That's Swords and Sorcery. It's mostly medieval history with the addition of magic and dragons. And a lot of it's medieval Italian history, medieval early Renaissance Italy with all the treachery and everything. But, there's a few people that do things, that see the dangers, that point their swords in the right direction, and people would watch this thing, would sign up for HBO just to see it so they can thrill along with Jon Snow, trying to defend against the Night King. It ended really stupidly. Don't bother. But there are books that are better than Game of Thrones. But if you liked Game of Thrones, think about why you liked it, what you liked about it. And there's a whole genre of this kind of thing. And there's the histories that you can read that are actual histories of real people doing great things. That's the sort of thing that you thrilled to in Game of Thrones.
Let us contrast Conan with the Hobbits.
Okay, interesting.
They're both just people of action. I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of contrast. Conan is a bigger guy, and he's willing to go toe-to-toe in steel and sinew and muscle against another, but they both just act. They don't bellyache. They don't ask why. They just do, and I think that's why they're heroic.
I'm just imagining Conan meeting Bilbo. There's actually a Conan character in The Hobbit.
Oh, in The Hobbit, okay.
Beorn. There's like a bear-like man that you don't want to get him mad.
And this is before Tolkien, by the way. Probably influential somehow.
Yeah, I sure would like to trace that out. So if you read the so-called high fantasy, that's Tolkien influenced. If you read Swords and Sorcery and Sandals and stuff, that's Conan. Mm-hmm. But they're probably equally influential. But the difference I would see, the hobbits are very content to stay home.
It's true.
And if they have to do something, they will do it. I don't think Conan is content to stay home.
No, he's not. He's a rambling man. That's why he's a cowboy. That's why this is a Western.
Right.
He's got that wanderlust thing that, and he's not of a place. Even though he's Cimmerian or Hyborian or whatever that is, that's just where he was born, where he was suckled by wolves or whatever the heck.
I was born on a battlefield. The first sounds I heard were that of steel. It's
crazy.
The writing style is, I think, a lot of fun. If you want to learn anything about descriptive writing,
it's over the top.
Oh, it's wonderful. The beginning of the Slithering Shadow, which is the last story that I made it through on this go-around. I've read all of them, but the desert shimmered in the heat waves. Conan the Cimmerian stared out over the aching desolation and involuntarily drew the back of his powerful hand over his blackened lips. He stood like a bronze image in the sand, apparently impervious to the murderous sun, though his only garment was a silk loincloth girdled by a wide, gold-buckled belt from which hung a saber and a broad-bladed poniard. It's so much fun, so thick, dripping language.
You stopped one line too soon.
Oh, go ahead.
On his clean-cut limbs were evidences of scarcely healed wounds. At his feet rested a girl, one white arm clasping his knee, against which her blonde head drooped. Her white skin contrasted with his hard bronzed limbs. Her short silken tunic, low-necked and sleeveless, girdled at the waist, emphasized rather than concealed her lithe figure. So it's a Boris Vallejo, or I don't know how you say that guy's name. I mean, you've seen these paintings, guys, probably, of the muscled barbarian with a woman like holding onto his leg or his arm, or sometimes the woman is fighting alongside him and they're fighting off orcs and monsters and things. While the artistry is wonderful and while those paintings are so much fun, it's all right here. Like the descriptive writing is so good. He just like probably read along and sketched the thing out. Then he just had to, just had to complete it.
Yeah, it's already painted. You just have to finish it. And you can get into this mode. I was having some fun with my family. We watched, I mentioned Woodhouse already. If you read a lot of Woodhouse, you get sucked into the Jeeves and Wooster kind of language. And so we were doing the Rocky movies as Jeeves and Wooster.
You're ridiculous people.
And with whom did you engage in fisticuffs? Spider Rico, a most insufficient fighter. What they in the know call a bum.
Right.
By Jove, you think anyone I toss around in the ring with is a bum. Yes, sir. You get into that thing, and you can do the same thing with Conan language. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about it. I'm going to go back. Brett, the guy at School Sucks who does our producing, you should listen to his podcast for sure. I do. I already mentioned this before, but he'd gone back in his own history and thought about the time that he walked out of school, and he's demythologized it. And I want to remythologize it. I want to enconanate everything in my life. Right. I want it all to be larger than life and epic and heroic. I said to my wife earlier today, are there any monsters you want me to slay? Just point my sword in the right direction. And she said, well, you could replace the closet door in Matthew's room. I was like, oh. Okay, I will.
Right. Kick it off the hinges.
I will destroy the closet demon and fix the door.
You strike it from its hinges, and then in its place, hang the skin of a leopard. I don't know.
So that's another reason Conan is attractive, at least to me. I want to think that I'm the hero of a story, and that my actions are larger than life and monumental. It's not Conan the accountant.
Dang it.
No offense to the accountants, but I bet you there are accountants who think that they're doing things. I bet they think of themselves in a Conan way. I destroyed these tax forms today, and long was the path of destruction in my wake. I don't know, whatever accountants do.
The column of numbers submitted to my sharp pencil. I have no idea.
I quaffed gallons of dark, bitter brew. You get this in your head and you can start to magnify yourself.
And a lot of us probably need that. Well, we probably need that in terms of our deeds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even the people that have inflated self-esteem that everyone around them knows is not warranted. If they actually knew how good the things they did do were, they probably wouldn't have to engage in all their puffery and bullshit. For a guy who has 2 or 3 kids and a wife and a mortgage and stuff, to go to work at the foundry every day for 40 years, that ain't nothing, man.
Right. And if he thought of himself, it would break your heart if he thought of himself as just a drudge doing, line work or whatever you do in a foundry. No, he's a hero going off to slay demons every day.
He's enslaving nature. They're like melting metal and casting things or building Chevy Impalas or, whatever it is.
Bending the forces of earth to his mighty will. Yeah. He brought sustenance to his family, to his brood of kings.
Through his sorcery, he rendered raw ores taken from the mountains of Pennsylvania into cars to take your kids to dinner with. I don't know. There's a lot in here that modernity, that our modern world might not like. Conan shook his hand, blinking. The sun's glare half blinded him. He lifted a small canteen from his belt and shook it, scowling at the faint splashing within. The girl moved wearily, whimpering, "Oh, Conan, we shall die here. I am so thirsty." The Cimmerian growled wordlessly, glaring truculently at the surrounding waste, with his out-thrust jaw and blue eyes smoldering savagely from under his black tousled mane, as if the desert were a tangible enemy. He stooped and put the canteen to the girl's lips. "Drink till I tell you to stop, Natala," he commanded. Natala? It's not Nutella. Natala. She drank with little panting gasp, and he did not check her. Only when the canteen was empty did she realize that he had deliberately allowed her to drink all their water supply. Little enough that it was. Tears sprang to her eyes. "Oh, Conan," she wailed, wringing her hands. "Why did you let me drink it all? I did not know. Now there is none for you. Hush," he growled. "Don't waste your strength in weeping." Straightening, he threw the canteen from him.
I love it. He's just taking care of her.
Yeah.
Now, the women are kind of...
Well, they're all kinds of stuff. Some of them will fight right alongside him. Some of them are these fainting damsels in distress.
Yeah, there's a few fainting damsels.
Yeah. I think they're all pretty hot.
Is this before Atlantis fell? Yeah, they are. They're... Well, look at the paintings.
Yeah. So, guys, you got to go look up these Boris. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Vallejo? Vallejo? Vallejo. You know the National Lampoon's Vacation movie poster with Chevy Chase, like holding up the tennis racket, and like Christy Brinkley and Beverly D'Angelo holding on to his legs.
Mm-hmm.
Boris painted that. So funny.
He's got a website.
Yeah, go look at those things. It's 80% aesthetic, isn't it?
I think so. It's appealing to something in you. So, read an article, either you shared it with me or Marcia shared it with me. Maybe you shared it to me and I shared it to Marcia, talking about revolutions are not won intellectually. They're won by the art. It's what people think is beautiful that makes them willing to do great deeds.
Is beauty evidence of truth, Karl?
Evidence? I don't know that beauty's evidence, because beauty... This is what one of my kids came up with.
Ooh.
She said, beauty is objective but not definable.
That is some Karl shoot stuff right there.
And I thought that was good. And the reason, I've got Boris's page up right now, borisjulie.com. They're the author of Monster Hunters International. What's his name? Had a Boris Vallejo kind of painting of him and his wife on the cover of one of his, that made him the hero, and she was looking up adoringly at him. I want to get one of those. I want me standing there with a sword.
Yeah.
And Melissa just looking up at me and the children around me with awe and wonder, and the demons vanquished. Just like a movie poster, like pyramid-like, with me at the apex of the pyramid. I want to get that done.
It's largely aesthetic, but it's also heroic. And I love the sense of life that Conan expresses. Endowed with all the barbarian's ferocious love of life and instinct to live, Conan the Cimmerian yet knew that he had reached the end of his trail. Who talks about those kinds of things in most literature, about love of life and instinct to live in the heroes. And it's not tainted by some weird, gross, altruistic, self-sacrificial thing in it either.
The self-sacrifice of the hero is a thing.
He might self-sacrifice, but it's precisely because he wants to.
Yeah. Yeah, like Conan, when he's fighting for that one prince, there's another princess that he fights for. We may die today, or we may not, but, we're going to live. The idea, he's telling his soldiers, we're going to live today, like plunder or hell. We're going to do the deed. We're not going to worry about death. If the deed is worth doing, it's worth doing. That it's better to do the action than it is to live a slave or to live in fear. That's also a very attractive idea. Gosh, I just love these so much.
I think these books are distinctly Texan as well.
Tell me why. You're from Oklahoma, though. That's a suburb of Texas.
Texas is our underwear.
Oklahoma is to Texas as Canada is to the United States?
We are their hat. Oklahomans and Texans hate each other, but they hate everybody else way more. It's like cousins, like you hate your cousin, but if anybody else says anything about him, fisticuffs. He wrote this in 1832.
1932.
I'm sorry, 1932. his grandparents were some sort of pioneers. I mean, if you're born in 1902, I think is when he was born, or 1908 or whatever it was, your grandparents were pioneers. They were people of action. They were civilizers. Sorry. Those people in Oklahoma and Texas, so much of the Midwest and the West, created something where there was nothing. And the whole cowboy or Western genre is a caricature of that spirit. You ever watch any of the Have Gun Will Travel television shows, or listen to any of the old radio shows about the Paladin?
Not Paladin.
Well, there was a radio show and a television show, Have Gun Will Travel. It was about a guy who went by the name Paladin, and he was a Civil War veteran, and he was a hired gun. And he would just travel around, and he was a fixer. And he would just fix stuff. He would just put wrongs back to right. That's it. Sometimes he'd get paid. Sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes somebody would hire him to fix something. He would show up and find out they were in the wrong, and he would turn the tables on them. And he was a Western Conan. He's got a little more intellect and a little less brawn than Conan, but that whole myth of like the Texas Ranger, the Lone Ranger, the pioneer, the cowboy as bringer of order, maps right onto this. And I think that a lot of times those stories were written by people who didn't really have a tie to that, but being from the oil fields and the dirt and the dust and the wind of West Texas puts Howard right in the middle of it. I think I can smell it and taste it in this book. He was into boxing. He was into weightlifting. What I understand, he'd get in a bar fight and was a rowdy gentleman. And I mean that. Like, he's a guy that's writing for a living and doing rowdy, manly stuff when he's not writing. That didn't happen out of nothing. Howard was a product of where he was from.
Yeah. And I said in a previous podcast or two, I like reading writers who have to write for their lunch money. Mm-hmm. If I'm reading J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye, he doesn't need to write anything. But he only wrote the one book. He doesn't need to learn to catch your interest. He doesn't need to learn to drive the story forward.
Clearly.
Somebody who's writing for money, like really writing for money, like if I don't sell this story, I don't have any income, is somebody that's going to learn how to write a story that grabs you and moves you along. And these Conan stories do it. This is like 32, 33, 34. He's writing these. This is how he's eating. All the magazines are going under.
Yeah, he was published mostly in Weird Tales.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'd like to get copies of that.
I bet they're expensive.
Yeah. So he doesn't play games with you. You start the story, there's the hero, there's the love interest, here's the mystery, there's the weird city, there's the sorcerer, it's entertaining. It's very entertaining. It's not as if he's writing a thesis to talk about the superiority of the barbaric to the civilized life. And oh, by the way, here's a story connected to it. No, all of the stuff that he has in his thoughts comes through in the really fun story.
Mm-hmm. I'm no Robert E. Howard scholar or anything, but I think that there's not any artifice in these, it doesn't seem like, and I think that Howard's worldview comes out through Conan. Conan, he's a barbarian, and so everywhere he goes, he's an outsider. The stories require the outsider so that the situation can be seen for what it is. Conan always comes into town, and as a result, he can see it with clean eyes, and he doesn't know everybody, and he doesn't have all these old family allegiances and old unfinished business, and he walks in and he can see everything as it is. And because of that, I think Conan gives Howard a way to say the things he wants to say about humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that too heady for a Conan story?
No, I think these are worth a read. I think they're worth sitting down. You can find it for free. It's better than Netflix. Sit down, get yourself some Conan.
And they're short stories too. They're not like, it's not like Dune. It's not like 800 pages.
I want to read a poem this is from The Phoenix on the Sword. This is in, I guess, chapter 5. What do I know of cultured ways, the guilt, the craft, and the lie? I who was born in a naked land and bred in the open sky. The subtle tongue, the sophist guile, they fail when the broadswords sing. Rush in and die, dogs, I was a man before I was a king. I have that like triple highlighted. I love that.
How's that not Texas, man? That open sky and the plain talking.
Yeah, I like the play on words. The cultured ways, the guilt, the craft, and the lie. It's actually GILT, meaning I've taken gold and made it fancy, but it rhymes. It's the same word as guilt. The guilt, the craft, and the lie. That's just perfect. It's all of the stories in that one little poem.
Howard's good. You know what? I want to take a break here for a second, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
And read a bit of a review. We got a review not too long ago. A guy gives us 4 stars out of 5. He says the show is great fun, and the discussions are for the common man. This makes the classics much less intimidating. Finally, the podcasters and guests are knowledgeable and great at presenting the topic. He says, however, I give them 4 out of 5 stars due to the increasing length of the episodes. Episode 66 is an hour and 55 minutes long. I reached saturation at the 20 to 30 minute mark. Please consider breaking up the podcast. Hey, listen, man. We've got people that want more. So I suggest to you that after about 20 minutes, you hit stop.
We'll be there for you.
Yeah, and then you can come back and hit play again. And it'll be just like we broke it up. We don't have any control over how long these are. Because I just looked at the clock and that made me think of this review.
It's been an hour. I don't know that we're done yet. It's good stuff. Should we talk about the Frost Giant's daughter? I sent you a picture.
Oh, let me go look at her. It says Ice Queen here.
It's a Boris Vallejo.
Yeah.
Tell us how to pronounce that. Is it Vallejo? Basically, the guy did the cover of every single book that I read up until probably age 18.
Yep. Let me see here. Did you read them because he did the cover?
Well, I won't lie. The cover might have grabbed my eye. The ladies that he paints are fair to middling.
And muscular and good. Hang on here. Let's listen.
Vallejo. All right. I'm sorry, Boris, if you're listening. He's still around.
Yeah, he's still around.
The Frost Giant's daughter is a nice little story. It's one of the first ones that I read. So Conan is on the field of battle, and everybody's been killed around him. He's the last man standing. And it's off in the frozen north, in the Icelands, and this girl appears. You know, pretty much naked, on the ice, bare feet.
He's a little worried about her feet being cold. He keeps bringing that up.
He's like, well, aren't you going to be cold? I'll take you to a village. And she says, my village is further than you can walk, Conan of Samaria. She laughed. Spreading her gosh, this prose is so perfect. Spreading her arms wide, she swayed before him, her golden head lolling sensuously, her scintillant eyes half shadowed beneath their long silken lashes. Am I not beautiful, O man? Like dawn running naked on the snows, he muttered, his eyes burning like those of a wolf. Then why do you not rise and follow me? And then she runs away. And he chases her.
My impression is she's never been caught.
No, she's never been caught. She doesn't expect that she's going to get caught. But this is Conan. And he catches her. And it turns out it's a little story. This is one of the shortest ones in the collection that we had, which we got. MobileRead.com has collections. That's where I found this one. But you can probably find on the internet some Robert Howard collections unless you want to buy a book. Just a little short thing. And he catches her. And it turns out that she is the daughter of this evil god Ymir, and she lurks around battlefields and steals the hearts of men and takes them to her father for them to eat.
Yeah, not figuratively. She literally plucks the heart out of their body and lays it steaming at her father's foot.
And I'm thinking of it, this is like Diomedes in the Iliad, when Diomedes takes on Aphrodite and stabs her. The heroes sometimes take on the gods, and the gods are a little afraid. And Howard knows this, and so he has this in this story. Her 2 brothers stand up and are ready to kill him, and he manages to kill the Frost Giant's sons, the Frost Giant god's sons. And, well, she gets away eventually, but he gets away. And then is it all a dream? But he's got her shift, her little bit of clothing she had in the snow.
Yeah, she was wearing like a bandana. And he like grabs it just as she like whips away.
Yeah, they're PG-13 sometimes, these stories.
Nothing happens. It's just imagery.
Nothing happens. It's never explicit, but it's in the old days, the teenage boys would be into this kind of thing. Nowadays, who knows what they're into. I love the idea of not accepting that the powers that be are the powers. That here's this evil frost maiden who's going to come and steal your heart. Oh, no, you're not. And sure, it's myth. It's myth. And sometimes you beat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. You're not always going to be able to conquer all the powers of heaven and earth. Maybe not even often. But I think, I'm going to sound like Socrates here, I think you would be better humans, better men and women, better men, if you thought that you could.
Right.
Chesterton says somewhere, the point of the fairy tale is not to tell you that there are dragons. We already know that. It's to tell you that there's a St. George, that there's a hero, that it's possible to beat the dragon. And so, I mean, Conan's complete fiction, right? There's no such thing as Conan.
What?
It's aesthetic.
Now, wait a minute. This is the guy that talks about elves and orcs like they're real. Now you're deucing on Conan.
Okay, maybe Howard found an ancient manuscript buried in a tunnel beneath Austin, Texas, for thousands of years, and was able to translate it with the help of unseen servants, and it's all true.
There have been heroes like this. We talked about Harold Godwinson and William the Conqueror.
Leonidas, William Tell. Yeah, you can find them.
Alcibiades.
Is he a hero?
Did crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, I don't know about that. If you go to Sicily to lead this expedition, and then you find out that your city has recalled you and that they're going to put you on trial and likely kill you, do you go back to the city or do you turn outlaw? And can you blame him for what he did?
Well, it's not necessarily binary, right? Like, you don't have to go back to the city and you don't have to be an outlaw either. But the guy did, like, tales of daring do. I mean, Alcibiades, over and over again, crazy stories. You can read about him in Plutarch. It's crazy.
Yeah. Everybody falls in love with him. It's insane.
The war in Gaul. You read that thing, you're like, God, these people are doing crazy stuff. They're going to go subjugate the Saxon people. I think it's even pre-Saxon, these weird Germans. And they'll build a bridge. You go over there and whip their ass a little bit, come back and tear the bridge down like in 2 days. Just to show them that they can do it, that they have the engineering, that they have the might to do that. I mean, heroic, crazy, superhuman stuff that these people would do, except it's not superhuman.
No, they're just human. And they're the same species as you. Conan is allegedly fictional, but he's just a human.
He's a type.
Right. He's Hambrickian. The last line of the slithering shadow. So I love it. In the slithering shadow, there's 2 women. There's a Natala, the slave that he liberated and took with him.
And gave all the water.
And then Thalis, the woman who's been living in this dream-haunted city, who tries to get rid of Natala and take Conan for herself. They've come to the end of the story, and Natala's scolding Conan. We didn't get out of there as clear and free as we should have. She's like, it's all your fault, she interrupted. If you had not looked so long and admiringly at that Stygian cat. And he says, Crom and devils, he swore. When the oceans drown the world, women will take time for jealousy. Devil take their conceit. Did I tell the Stygian to fall in love with me? After all, she was only human.
Yeah, what's she going to do but fall in love?
It's like that bit of humor at the end.
Stygian cat. Listen, if you don't work that into a conversation with Melissa in the next 5 days, you failed. No, wait a minute. No. You can't work it in conversation. You have to call her a Stygian cat.
I have to call. Okay. Before she hears the podcast.
Before she hears the podcast, right. I'm so excited about this.
Well, I'm thinking that Conan and Natala are pretty much, or who is the other one? The princess, Yasmila?
Mm.
That's you and Charity.
Oh, is it? Charity's Conan?
No, you're Conan.
Oh, yeah, that's high praise.
I don't know. Is she Conan?
Sometimes.
And you're the maiden?
Yeah. I don't know. We both, sometimes we have to war to figure out who's the protagonist. This thing is full of these little lines like this that I love. In the Elephant's Tower, this weird spider is in this. It goes in this. They open a door and there's this dark room, and the master thief goes in the room and doesn't make it out. Sorry for the spoilers. And Conan, being Conan, he has to go in the room anyway. Like Hamlet goes back to the house. Conan goes ahead and goes into the room. Conan froze in his tracks. That he did not instantly explode in a burst of murderous frenzy is a fact that measures his horror, which paralyzed him where he stood. A civilized man in his position would have sought doubtful refuge in the conclusion that he was insane. It did not occur to the Cimmerian to doubt his senses.
Mm-hmm.
There's this line after line in there about his self-assuredness, the plainness and cleanness of his thought and his apprehension of the situation in front of him. I just love that.
Well, he beats all these monsters because everyone else is horrified and descending into gibbering madness, and Conan throws rocks at him.
Right. And he's afraid, by the way, because it just says he was paralyzed by his horror where he stood. Would Pasquarella say that he's Aristotelian in his bravery here? It's not that he didn't experience fear, but he acted in the correct measure. He wasn't so brash as to get killed.
Well, there's a paper for you. Conan as Aristotelian hero.
Yeah. So
is he temperate? Is he's certainly liberal?
Mm-hmm.
He gives away all his stuff. Magnanimous.
Yeah. Seems magnanimous.
Pasquarella, if you're listening to this, the office is calling.
Yeah. People would say that this is pulp, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time when you would see depictions of heroes in pulp, they would act and they would be brave, but you wouldn't know that they acted in spite of their fear and that he had absolute trust in his own senses. I mean, that's what I think sets us apart from lesser pulp. or maybe even quote unquote good stuff.
I think there's comparisons that we could make between Pulp Fiction, not the movie. I'm not a fan of the movie, but Pulp Fiction like Conan versus the important fiction that gets reviews in New York Times Review of Books or something. We did that podcast on art. There are books that nobody reads who doesn't have to, that are considered to be important because they're fashionable.
Right.
In whatever the worldview is. If you are writing for your lunch, you can't do that. You have to write good stories. I had subscriptions to the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, and Isaac Asimov had a science fiction one. I had a whole bunch of those. I don't have them now. There was so much good stuff in there.
Yeah.
A mutual friend of ours wrote for some of those magazines, and I have his stories archived, and it's great stuff. Thought-provoking, entertaining. Usually they're short stories. You can get through them over lunch.
I really miss magazines. Blogs just aren't the same. I used to get Ellery Queen magazines, mysteries. I would buy at like yard sales every back edition of the Alfred Hitchcock magazines. I subscribed to some magazines earlier this week, Karl.
You did? What did you subscribe to?
Self-Reliance magazine and Backwoods Home magazine.
Backwoods Home.
Yeah, not backwards.
I think it won't be long before you are a contributor.
Maybe. Topics in this month's issue include electric fence safety, building a smokehouse, cloning tomato plants, 7 mistakes of food storage, and raising kids simply.
You turned me on. Is that Foxfire?
Yeah.
That series started off as a high school project.
Yeah.
A bunch of great stuff in this little magazine to document the fading civilization of the Appalachians. They just go talk to grandma and say, how do you do this? And then just write it down.
It's great. It's not just write it down. Like grandma would go ahead and make candles and they would take pictures and she'd teach them how to do it. It's fantastic. And in doing She taught us how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
These stories are short. They're not really, really easy. He uses some big words. He makes up a bunch of words. And the style isn't what you run into all the time. But it's not hard either. It's not high concept. But it'll bump you a little bit when you get started, and that's okay. I think you ought to go read a few, and they're almost all in the public domain, and you can get them on your Kindle or whatever it is you read. And like you said earlier, this is a really good lunch break story. Really good lunch break stories, all of these.
Mm-hmm. And then when you get off lunch, you're going to be thinking of it. All the rest of your day will be in these kinds of words. Like, I just want to read a little snippet. Men said, this is talking about, of course, an evil sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
Men said that he had a whole library of dark works bound in skin flayed from the living human victims, and that in nameless pits below the hill whereon his palace sat he trafficked with the powers of darkness, trading screaming girl slaves for unholy secrets. He was the real ruler of Koth. I just love that.
Yeah.
And you maybe you go off to work if you're still working these days, and you think about your boss. Has he traded young slave girls for evil secrets? Does he have a library bound in human flesh?
I'll tell you what, that's a boss you could at least respect, as opposed to some guy that bought an MBA for some stupid internet whatever program and was a striver and a mediocrity that played the political game to get over you.
Well, that would have been one of the effete nobles in the service of the dark sorcerer.
Right.
Yeah, you have to figure out, what's he really talking about? If you want to make these stories, put them back in 1933.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading just the beginning of that Benjamin Graham investment book that we've been talking about. And in the introduction, it talks about one of the formative moments in Graham's life is his mom goes to the bank and wants to cash a check, and he hears them say, I can't remember her name. Is Doris Graham worth $5? That there were livelihoods being snuffed out, not through any fault of the people, through the fault of whatever the Great Depression was the fault of.
Right.
And so if you think about that, then evil sorcerers working dark magic beneath the hearts of your cities. You could say, yeah, I get it. Yeah, you going to read more of these?
Oh, well, I would like to.
Our schedule's pretty full running this podcast.
It's so full. It's ridiculous. Which brings us to the question of the week. What next, Karl? We'd kicked around some ideas. What do you got?
Well, were you going to do 1984? You ready for that?
Golly.
Is that too heavy?
Well, I'm up to date on it.
I've never read it.
Yeah, I'm game. We can read 1984. I recommend, Karl, that for the show that we record on the 14th, that we do The Inimitable Jeeves. Get you a 2-for-1 there, huh?
Sure. Would that come out after the seminar?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't spoil it for him.
That's right.
Sure, we could do that. That'd be a nice break.
We'll read George Orwell's 1984. Have you read Down and Out in Paris and London?
Nope.
I may have got that backwards. It might be London and Paris. Really interesting. Yeah, we'll read 1984. Anything else you want to hit? Anything else you can think of?
Oh, I'm sure it'll come up. We're talking about Benjamin Graham. That might be a good thing to do.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do a little Benjamin Graham, The Intelligent Investor. Oh, are we going to do the Satoshi paper?
That will be fun. Do we need to get... I asked you in the message about the math on it. I have my theory on who that is.
Do you think it's like Neil Gaiman or something?
It's Neil Stephenson.
Neil Stephenson. I got my Neils wrong.
He denies it, of course. Exactly.
That's what he would do, right?
Exactly, right? That just proves the point that he must be him. Because if he...
Typical.
Wait, if he were Satoshi, he would deny it. And if he were not Satoshi, he would deny it. Uh-oh. Now I'm confused.
Yeah, so we're talking about reading the paper Well, let me get the full title of the paper. We'll see. We'll get email. If people are interested, we'll get email about that. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by Satoshi Nakamoto. This is the paper that this Satoshi character, no one knows who that really is, wrote that outlines the whole Bitcoin blockchain and really invents cryptocurrency. And I think there are a lot of metaphysical problems posed by this. There are all kinds of interesting questions to think about when you read this, like what is money? What does money do? What is currency? Is there a difference between currency and money? Wherein does the full faith and credit lie? All kinds of interesting questions, I think.
And then maybe we ought to go back to a more old book after that.
I'm game. How old?
I was thinking we could do Cicero on friendship.
Okay.
Or Aristotle on friendship.
A little chunk there out of ethics.
Yeah.
That'd be all right. Yeah, there's so much to do. Guys, if you could see, like, people say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's not true.
It's not true. What you end up doing is you turn something that you love into like an ox collar that you just drag with you everywhere you go.
Yeah, you take your passion. I'm going to go back to another one of the School Sucks podcastings. He was talking about the dirty jobs guy.
Micro.
Yeah, that maybe you shouldn't do what you love, but that you should do what nobody else wants to do, and then you will find that you love it.
Yeah, I firmly believe that if you can trick yourself into loving whatever it is you do, that you win. I have one of my best friends owns a Roto-Rooter franchise. Nobody wants to do that. So there's money in it.
Right.
And he gets to do problem solving. My bathtub won't drain. Well, how could that be? Blah, blah, blah. It's not just there's hair in the drain. Sometimes it is, but not always. And he gets to do problem solving. He gets to help people in times of crisis, and he has found a way to enjoy that a great deal and find it very challenging. And meanwhile, he gets to charge what he wants because nobody else is in there beating the door down to do it for free. Like a barbell coach.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. Barbell coach, I don't know how I ended up where I am today.
Clean living?
No, I went to school for engineering, and I never did any of it, or hardly did any of it. And now it's barbell coach and interlocutor for great books.
And podcaster.
Yeah.
Co-host of 2 shows, which means that's like being the host of one.
Life is weird, but it's one big Conan adventure.
Yeah. Hey, guys, there's another Online Great Books podcast about Conan. There are many, many, many stories out there. Go get any of them. You can just pick up. There's no first story. Just pick one of them up and read it. Just Google it, find the first one, and read it. You'll have a lot of fun. If you've got a young person in your life, 14-year-old kid, they ought to read some of those. All this stuff like, I really don't like to read.
They're making you read Lord of the Flies.
Right.
Damn it.
It's gross. Oh, we need to read that one day and just deuce on it for 1 hour and 55 minutes.
Got to keep it under 2 or our reviewer will be unhappy.
Well, thank you for being a fan, reviewer, but please just hit pause and come back.
Yeah, really, I do appreciate that you enjoy the show.
I do too. We can't stop. We don't know how long these are going to be. Well, there's another show. Listen, I already told you once, done told you once. I'll tell you again. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/plague, and you can sign up to do a seminar with Michelle Hawkins of the Music and Ideas podcast over Ender's Game, or you can do one with Karl over a P.G. Woodhouse comedy, or John Pasquarello, who was on episode 66, where we talk about Pride and Prejudice, who is too smart by half, and he'll be talking about Walker Percy's essay, Loss of the Creature, which we talked about on an earlier show. But don't go listen to that show. Go read the essay and then do that seminar. So, a little advice. If you don't have a lot of time, you're not sure you can fit one in, do the Loss of the Creature one, because that writing is about 15, 18 pages long. It's an essay, and it's there's a lot packed in there, but it ain't as big as the other two. If you want the comedy or just want to spend some time with Uncle Karl, you can sign up for the P.G. Woodhouse one. And, of course, Michelle, who wouldn't want to spend time with her, too? You can check her out with the Ender's Games one. And, guys, I think the food shortages have started.
Yeah, maybe.
I saw butter for $10 a pound here in Tulsa.
You going to get a cow?
Not today. We've got to finish that fence first.
So next week?
Yeah, next week. As soon as we get that fence done. So, guys, go out there and keep your stuff on salt and take care of it because it might be a while. And we'll talk to you all next week.